In recent years, some headlines and social media posts have claimed that the Vikings were Muslims and not white, based on certain academic discussions and archaeological finds. Such claims are dramatic and attract attention, but do they hold up under historical scrutiny? To answer this question properly, we must explore who the Vikings really were, what their ethnic and religious identities were, and how they interacted with the wider world. Who were the Vikings? The Vikings were seafaring warriors, traders, and explorers from Scandinavia to today's Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, who lived during the Viking Age. They are often remembered for their raids across Europe, their advanced ships, and their exploration of distant lands like Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. But the Vikings were more than just raiders. They were also farmers, shipbuilders, artisans, merchants, and settlers. They played a major role in shaping early medieval European history, leaving their mark from England and Ireland to the Byzantine Empire and Baghdad. Were Vikings white by modern racial terminology? Yes, the Vikings were white. The majority of Vikings were ethnic Norse people with ancestral roots in Northern Europe. Historical descriptions, as well as genetic studies, confirm that they typically had light-skin blonde or reddish hair, blue or green eyes. Of course, as the Viking world expanded, some genetic mixing occurred through intermarriage and slavery, especially in areas like the British Isles, the Baltics, and Eastern Europe. However, the core Viking population remained Northern European in origin, so the claim that Vikings were not white is misleading and historically inaccurate. While the idea may be intended to challenge racist mythologies that glorify pure white Vikings, replacing one myth with another isn't helpful. The truth is more nuanced. Were Vikings Muslims? No, Vikings were not Muslims. The Vikings practiced Norse paganism, a rich mythology centered around gods like Odin, Thor, Freya, and Loki. They believed in Valhalla, the hall of fallen warriors, and had rituals involving sacrifice, runes, and sacred trees. Their religion was deeply connected to nature, the seasons, and their warrior culture. However, during the later parts of the Viking Age, the 10th and 11th centuries, many Vikings converted to Christianity, especially in places like Norway, Denmark, and England. This shift was often linked to political alliances and royal conversions. But Islam never became a religion practiced by Vikings. There is no historical record of mass conversion, no Viking mosques, no Islamic rituals, and no Islamic names in Viking sagas or chronicles. What about the Arabic inscriptions and Muslim contacts? This is where the confusion comes from. Some Viking burial sites, especially in Sweden, have yielded textiles and artifacts that appear to contain Arabic script, even the word Allah. These items were likely imported through trade. Vikings were excellent traders. They used rivers like the Volga and Dnieper to travel deep into Eastern Europe and the Middle East, reaching places like Baghdad, which was then the heart of the Abbasid. The Vikings who went east were known as the Rus. They established trade cities like Novgorod and Kiev, and traded furs, slaves, honey, and amber in exchange for silk, silver, spices, and jewelry from the Islamic world. One of the most famous Muslim travelers to describe the Vikings was Ahmad ibn, a 10th century emissary from Baghdad. In his writings, he vividly describes the Rus Vikings he met near the Volga River. He admired their bravery but was shocked by their hygiene and funeral customs, which included human sacrifice. So, yes, Vikings interacted with Muslims, and Islamic artifacts made their way into Viking lands. But this does not mean they were Muslim. It simply shows the reach of Viking trade networks and the cultural exchange of the time. What did UK professors really say? Some UK academics, particularly in the fields of archaeology, anthropology, and history, have challenged the stereotypical image of Vikings as exclusively white, blonde, and brutal. Instead, they emphasize that Viking society, like many ancient societies, was more diverse than previously assumed. They point out that Viking society included slaves from different backgrounds, including Slavic, Celtic, and possibly Middle Eastern people. Viking trade routes connected them with non-European cultures, including Muslim civilizations. Viking DNA studies show some non-Scandinavian admixture, especially in port cities and settlements. However, none of these professors have claimed that Vikings were Muslims or not white. That's a misrepresentation of their academic work, often twisted by clickbait articles or politically charged narratives. Why these myths spread? In today's world, history is often used as a weapon in culture wars. Some groups want to glorify Vikings as pure white, Christian warriors, while others push back by emphasizing diversity and inclusion, sometimes going too far. The idea that Vikings were Muslims and not white is likely a reactionary myth, meant to provoke, challenge, or shock, rather than to educate. History is rarely black and white. The truth about the Vikings is more fascinating. They were a unique people, rooted in Scandinavia, but connected to the world through war, trade, diplomacy, and curiosity. What's the truth? Let's summarize the key facts. Vikings were white Scandinavians, based on genetics and geography. They practiced Norse paganism, and later, many converted to Christianity and Islam. They traded extensively with the Islamic world, and even reached cities like Baghdad. Some Islamic artifacts have been found in Viking graves, but this reflects contact, not conversion. No serious scholar has claimed that Vikings were Muslims or not. So, the viral claim is false and based on misinterpretation or sensationalism. But what is true and worth celebrating is that the Vikings were far more globally connected than many people realize.